My name is Kim Ottley, and I'm the Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce of Public Policy of the Chamber of Commerce of Southwest Indiana. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Tom Washburne, who is a candidate seeking election to the office of State Representative to the Indiana General Assembly. Please note that the same set of questions will be used for both candidates running for this office. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks.
All right, let's get started. Please state your name, office you're seeking, and your current employment.
Tom Washburne, House District 64, and I am Vice President and Associate Counsel for Old National Bank Corp here in Evansville.
Okay. If elected, what would be your top 3 priorities, and how would you seek to fund and implement those priorities while serving in the state legislature?
Sure. You know, I think one of the great things about living in Indiana is that we've actually been pretty well managed through the last few years. And so as I'm running for office, I'm not running to necessarily go up there and change a lot, because I think it's been pretty well managed. We could be looking like Illinois right now. We could be looking like California, some of the other states that are really having problems right now. I think that I like to think in the big themes when I'm approaching this kind of thing at this level, and that is I think we need to continue to reduce the regulations that we have on our industries. We need to continue to reduce the tax burdens on individuals and on the industries. I think that freeing the individual to, in the words of our founders, pursue happiness as they see fit is the best way to achieve economic growth. It's the best way to achieve having things get better for all of us. And so I intend to further those 2 things, especially trying to keep the economic house in order and reduce the red tape for the businesses and any unnecessary regulation that stifles the way things are being run. And then, you know, being an attorney and having practiced law in Indiana for a long time, I have one project that I'm especially interested in, and that involves trying to level the playing field between the federal judiciary and the state judiciary. In the federal system, you're allowed to have staff attorneys. They call them law clerks, but essentially they're staff attorneys. I was actually a staff attorney many years ago for a federal judge, and the staff attorneys write the opinions for the judges on motions to dismiss and motions for summary judgment. And in the state court system, our judges don't have that. And so it makes it extremely difficult for them to seriously consider a complicated motion to dismiss or a complicated motion for summary judgment. And you look at that and say, well, why is that important? If you're a company like Old National, Vectran, or boy, any company you could put and you get sued in Indiana, you're going to look at that and say, wow, you know, I wish I could get to federal court because we're really right on the law on this, but it's going to be difficult to get that decision out of that judge at the early stages. And so we're going to spend a lot of money fighting this when we know in the end we're going to win. Maybe it'll take us all the way to get to the Court of Appeals. We're going to win because the law is on our side, but unfortunately the judge doesn't have time to write the opinion to get us there. And so if we can come up with a system of allowing the state court judges to have access to a pool of staff attorneys, perhaps make you know, for complicated cases, maybe jurisdiction in excess of $75,000, something like that, so that our judges on the state court are put on the same equal playing field with the federal. And you know, it sounds like a kind of, you know, why would anyone care about this? But you know, when companies are saddled with needless legal expenses every year on things that could go away, and I'm not about changing any law or changing any judges, I'm just talking about things that could go away if we got good, quick decisions and cut that out. That translates to jobs because, you know, nothing's neutral. When a company's spending several $100,000 a year fighting things that shouldn't have to be fighting under the law, that translates into an inability to grow or having to terminate people or do reductions in force. And we got to change this and get it to where our justice system in Indiana is just as good as the federal. And I think when you do that, companies will want to locate here because Indiana isn't alone in having their judges be understaffed, so to speak. I'm sure that companies that find themselves in litigation a lot, manufacturers especially, would love to be in a state where if they get sued in the state, they would be subject to the same kind of justice that you would get in the federal system. So that would be a priority of mine.
Do you support the Kern and Shepherd initiative? Please explain your answer.
Sure. Kern and Shepherd had 27 different provisions. About a third of them had been enacted. I kind of went back and tried to look at the ones that had been. I didn't really have problems with the ones that had been. I think it's probably pretty good ideas. Some of the things that haven't been enacted yet typically are dealing with restructuring the townships and restructuring the counties, trying to go to one commissioner versus 3. And District 64 that I'm running for is kind of an interesting one because we have 5 counties in this thing. You have parts of Pike, parts of Knox, parts of Posey, parts of Vanderburgh, and all of Gibson County. And I have been in every one of those counties, and I've been in a lot of those little communities. And when I travel around and I talk to people, they're not ready for changing their county structure yet. And maybe they never will be. But, efficiency is a great thing in government, and I favor efficient government, but it also has to be kind of with the consent of the governed. And it may be hard for the folks here in Evansville to understand, but when you live out like I do in Armstrong Township, people identify with Armstrong Township. It's their location. They don't like the idea of doing away with Armstrong Township. It's home to them, and they know the trustee. And they like the trustee. And the budget's minimal for that fella, and it really it just doesn't seem like the people are ready for it yet. And so we have the referendum coming this fall. I think that'll be an interesting one to see how people do come out and whether they favor expanding Evansville out into the county and having a one government situation. I know it worked really well for Indianapolis. Would it work well here? I don't know. Out in Armstrong Township, we have livestock and farming and ditches and just different things that you would not find down here in the city of Evansville. And whether the people out there will accept it, I don't know how that'll turn out. But I can tell you right now, out in the Darmstadt area where I live, it's overwhelmingly opposed to it.
During the next session of the General Assembly, legislators will be tasked with writing a new budget. What priorities would you advocate in this process? If a budget increase is needed, what taxes would you increase? Or what budget cuts would you propose?
Well, I don't think we're going to need a tax increase in Indiana. We have been truly blessed. When you look at the states around us and the other states in this country, to be running a nearly $2 billion surplus in the time coming out of a recession is truly remarkable. In fact, we have been so well managed that I think one of the big issues that's going to face the General Assembly is holding the line. When the economy begins to come around generally, it's quite likely that we're going to be flush with cash in Indianapolis. And the pressure is going to become enormous to create new programs, expand existing ones without any rational basis for doing so. I've been around politicians a long time, and it is very easy to say, we can't do this because we don't have the money. And for most of our political lives, that's been the situation in Indiana and all around us. In Washington, D.C., it clearly is, where they're spending money they don't have every day. But that excuse doesn't hold up very well when you do have the money. And so the big struggle for the Indiana General Assembly, I believe, is going to have to be drilling down to the core principles of what we want our government to be doing those very well, and withholding the urge to spend money just because they have it. And we need to get to the point where we get that money back to the people who are paying it. We did a great job with property taxes on individuals. I think we can do some work on that for the industry and corporations. That would spur more job growth. There's some work that could be done there with where we tax the personal property of the businesses, maybe a little bit improperly, maybe a little bit too much. And of course, income taxes are always something that all of us care about. And we have to begin seeing, I think, that when we free industry and we free entrepreneurs and individuals from tax burdens that aren't necessary or from regulations that aren't necessary, that this really does spur economic achievement. And this economic achievement spills out into everything.
What do you consider to be the top transportation and infrastructure priorities for Southwest Indiana, and what plans do you have for funding them?
Yeah, you know, I don't think we can top I-69 in terms of the project that's most important to us here in Southwest Indiana. Having that direct access all the way to Indianapolis is going to be huge for our future economic growth. It is truly remarkable that we have the progress that's going on today. Back in the 1990s, I was Chief of Staff for John Hosteller, and we were out there trying to lay the groundwork for the studies and get the preliminary engineering monies. And quite frankly, when I was there, I never thought it would come to be in my, the time when I'd know about it. But due to some real leadership, again, by Mitch Daniels and the Indiana General Assembly making this a priority, we have seen incredible movement towards Crane on that. Just that alone will be very helpful to us because Crane is such an economic driver, and extending that up to Indianapolis will be big. But that's going to require getting a bridge into Kentucky, and we can't expect Kentucky to pay for the whole thing. So I think that'll be the next priority. I still think probably getting that road to Indianapolis is higher priority than getting the bridge. But the bridge is coming, and we have to, just like I said, back in the 90s, we were laying the foundation for the interstate. We need to start laying the foundation now for the bridge, beginning to identify routes, begin to identify what kinds of engineering obstacles there might be, and this stuff takes a lot of time. So perhaps even before funding is fully identified, we need to at least begin that process. And because this is a federal highway, it's going to take a lot of cooperation between our federal transportation folks and INDOT and our local people to do this. And perhaps one of the things that a state representative can do, especially one who's I used to be Chief of Staff for Mike Sabro too, who sat on the transportation committee. Maybe somebody who's familiar with both the federal way of doing things and the state can work as a conduit to help advance this stuff.
Okay. Along those same lines, the next question has to do with what would you do to encourage the construction of this bridge over the Ohio River between Evansville and Henderson?
Yeah, I think I've already answered that.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to get folks to the table and begin to see that even though I-69 is a long way from being completed in Indiana, it's time to begin the planning for where we're going into Kentucky, and working with the Kentucky officials, our congressmen and senators, and Indiana Department of Transportation, and whoever the new governor is, to say this is coming, this is next.
Okay. Government doesn't necessarily create jobs, but it does create
Doesn't
conditions.
necessarily? Okay, it creates a few jobs.
Government does not create jobs, but does create conditions that make additional jobs more or less likely. What conditions or economic development tools would you like to see improved upon or added in order to stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and retain current employers in Southwest Indiana?
I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
No.
I just got a kick out of it because I guess government does create jobs, but it always has to take from somebody over here to make a job over here. And so the question is, did it really create a job or did it just shift a job? I'm not really sure.
Right.
But again, when we look at the big factors of allowing free enterprise to flourish, that's where jobs come from. And we have to understand, I think, that the fact that this person over here is getting richer doesn't mean that the person over here is going to get poorer. It all goes. And wealth is not this pie where we say this slice of the pie is taken up by somebody over here, so you're not going to get any of that. It really is a situation where it's passed down at all levels. And unfortunately, our government right now, especially in Washington, D.C., has just set up a class warfare pitting job creators and people who have been very successful and taken lots of risks and pitting them against folks who have no interest in being a job creator, but every interest in working at a factory or doing whatever. And we have to change this climate to see that we're all in this together. And that even takes kind of a bigger thing. And I don't know how you ever do this, but our founders were really wise when they said in the Declaration of Independence that we have this right for the pursuit of happiness. And in this pursuit of happiness, we have to understand that just because a person has more money than another person doesn't make them happy. And your happiness or your unhappiness isn't tied to this economic strata where you find yourself. And I'm not talking about the people on the very extreme poor end or something. I mean, I'm just talking about, generally speaking, you go out to the Frog Follies and those folks are psyched up to be messing with their 40s cars, 30s and 40s. They're just as happy as the owner of a local business who might have a yacht down in Grand Cayman. And that's the exciting thing, is that we're all able to pursue happiness as we see fit. And for many, many people, pursuing wealth isn't their thing. For some people it was. For some people, running a business was everything. And now that person is employing lots of folks. And we just got to see that we're all in the same game together here and stop this class warfare interaction. And so, I want to see government policies that encourage entrepreneurs, encourage risk takers, encourage those who do the employing to get out there and do what they do best. And it will lure the workers into Indiana that we need to come and fill those factories or fill those ideas. And I think that's where your economic development is going to be.
Okay. Substance abuse, particularly methamphetamine abuse, is a costly community problem in terms of law enforcement, crime, judicial incarceration, fire hazard, environmental concerns, child care, health care, and other expenditures. What changes in the approach to this problem would you suggest, and how would you fund any new strategies?
I don't have new strategies on meth. Meth is illegal. Meth, it's very difficult to get many of the products that go into meth. Even if we were to make all of it illegal, you could run across the borders and get it in another state. I think our law enforcement does a yeoman's job. I don't know any neglect of meth lab busting. It's being busted every chance they can. You read about it all the times in the paper. Substance abuse and meth is bigger than a strategy of government to stomp it out, so to speak. And so, to me, it's a problem that calls out for a big solution. And it might be a time-taking solution, but I think the big solution is, again, fostering a climate where we can have economic prosperity, and that economic prosperity will hopefully eliminate some of the income disparities that you have, and the poverty and other self-worth and all the variables that go into the meth problem, hopefully can begin to be stomped out. We have, I'll just call it cultural rot in our society. And I don't know how government ends cultural rot, but to the extent that you can fashion policies that will encourage individual success and economic prosperity, hopefully that is a step in the right direction to reversing the cultural decay that we have. That's a tough problem.
Yeah. Finally, what's your long-term vision for Southwest Indiana, and what specific ideas or proposals would you suggest to improve the quality of life in our region?
I like Indiana. I was raised here. I grew up in Princeton, and have lived here much of my life. And I love the people here. I like the scenery here. But we aren't going to be known for being the most beautiful part of America. Our climate just isn't there. We've got great people, but most regions will say they got great people. So I think we need to hearken back to what made people want to come to America. They didn't leave Ireland and Switzerland because it was more beautiful in the United States. They left because their systems of government and the ideas which they were living under were against basic notions of human dignity and freedom and religious freedom and self-expression and the ability to make something of yourself. And so they came to the United States, and we were, and hopefully still are, known as a country that was founded on ideas. We're unlike all these other nations. You know, they were founded from antiquity and who beat up who or who did whatever. The United States was founded on an ideal. And you know, again, they did a great job on our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution expressing this, where he said, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We take this stuff for granted, but the rest of the world doesn't. And if I could make Indiana and Southwest Indiana stand for anything, I would love to see a revival of sorts to say, we believe these truths, and we put them into practice in our policies, we teach them in our schools, we talk about them in our communities, and we are a freedom-loving people that sees our future in those kinds of things. And so if you want to come and be a part of this, adhere to these truths that our founders set forth. We still espouse them in Indiana. Come here. And I think that's what I'd love the vision for Southwest Indiana to be known as a place where these truths are emphasized and individuals can succeed like nowhere else on earth. And I think that will translate into a better way of life for everyone here.
Well, Tom, we greatly appreciate your time today. If you have a campaign website or contact information that you'd like to share, you can do so now.
Well, we have a website. Everybody has a website these days. www.tomwashburne.com. It's TOMWASHBURNE.com. And there's other contact information on there.
Okay. Well, thanks again for your participation. For our viewers, this interview and all of the candidate interviews conducted by the Chamber of Commerce of Southwest Indiana will be accessible on the Chamber's website at www.ccswin.com. Please note that the content of this video interview and all the candidate interviews are only for authorized use by the Chamber of Commerce of Southwest Indiana.